what do we want from AI? I mean, for me, I want them to be accurate and I want them to be of practical use for the stuff that I want them to do. And AI certainly achieves that for the most part. But then peel back a layer and there's a whole bunch of stuff that suddenly becomes really important. Security and privacy, for instance. I don't know about you, but I don't trust these big corporations with my data. You shouldn't either. And there's also the matter of sustainability, because I don't know if you know, but the energy requirements for training one of those large models is immense. Now, you could look at the release of ChatGPT in 2022 as just really good PR for something called machine learning. And machine learning has been around for years. Machine learning is a process of training models to do specific tasks really well. So maybe it's time for us to take a step back, away from those big LLMs that the corporates push on us, and instead look at the smaller models. And by small, I mean models that we can run locally on our machines. So I'll be using the terms small and local interchangeably. And this isn't really as difficult as you might think, especially with tools such as LM Studio, which is something that I'm going to be exploring with you today. So if we head on over to lmstudio.ai, we'll come to this page and they describe the tool. This sums it up. Download and run models on your computer, and automatically it will recognize your machine. And this is going to be pattern going forward. And this is a super important aspect of this. For me, I've got a Mac M series machine. More on that in a bit, not because I'm showing off, but because it's important. So if you go and download LM Studio and open it up, no doubt before you arrive on this screen, you'll be asked to download a model before you get started. And it doesn't matter which model you pick, just tell it to download that model and that's fine. And this should be a fairly familiar screen. You've got your chat box here, and when you chat in here, your response goes up there. One of the key differences here is at the top, you have to select a model. Now, you'll likely only have one of the models that you just were forced to download on installing. But this is where you select the model. And on the left here, you'll see there's chat, there's developer mode, my models is a list of the models that you got downloaded, and discover, which means discover models. And we're in the chat section at the moment. So let's head on over to discover to see what there is to see. Okay, so when you first arrive at the discover screen, it can be a little bit overwhelming, but don't worry, we're going to go through this one step at a time. I'm going to start with the hardware section, actually. So this gives you a good summary of what my hardware is that I'm running LM Studio on. And I've got an Apple M series M1 chip. I've got 16 GB RAM. I've also got GPU. This is one GPU detected. And the thing with LLMs is that they need GPUs to run, really. And if you could run them on the CPU, but they're going to be painfully slow. And not only do you need a GPU, but you also need a GPU with a lot of memory. And this is why the Apple M series is pretty decent machine to get started with, because they have unified memory, which means that your system memory and your GPU memory are shared, which means that GPU has got 16 GB RAM available to it, which is pretty decent, which means that I'm able to run these LLMs fairly quickly on my machine. So keep that in mind. Now, when we're first starting off, I'd say it doesn't really matter if your machine is super slow or if your machine doesn't meet these requirements. Just know that if this is something you want to do going forward, you might need to upgrade, even if it's the cheapest M series machine. But you certainly need a minimum of 16 GB RAM to get going. If we head on over to the model search section, in the middle, you'll see a whole list of models available to us. And you'll see that at the top there, it says best match, because what LM Studio does very thoughtfully is it considers your hardware and then it considers what are the best models that you could run on your hardware. So for me, the Qwen series of models is a good match. And when you come over to the right side, you get a whole bunch of details about that model. So here's a quick summary of the model, and you'll see that the capabilities. It's been trained for tool use. So more about that probably in the next video. And this is also a reasoning model. So if you see like DeepSeek, for instance, it has like this lengthy thinking cycle before it responds. This is the reasoning or thinking. The format is important because what's called quantized. So they're being squished and placed into a format that can be best used for various machines. And GGUF is a good format, which means it's highly optimized to run on local machines. And MLX, meaning that is specifically optimized to run on Apple series of machines. So at the top there, you can see that GGUF and MLX are ticked, which means that these format models are going to be prioritized over all of the other models because they're going to run the best on this machine. So parameters. Think of parameters as dials that you can use to change the way that the LLM works. So 4 billion parameters means you've got 4 billion dials to kind of tweak the LLM in different ways. To give you some context, ChatGPT 3 had 175 billion parameters. ChatGPT 4, I believe it's had something like 500 billion parameters. And ChatGPT 5 has squillions of parameters. I don't know how many parameters it has, but it has a lot of parameters. So these big models have loads and loads and loads of these parameters, but these smaller models have fewer parameters, which is why we're able to get the sizes down. I've not worked on these at all. Anyway, back to this. So now, this is another part to pay attention to. This is the size of the model, 2.28 GB. So that tells you, like it says here, full GPU offload possible. So then this means that the model is able to fit comfortably within the RAM. And like it says here, this means that it could speed up inference. So that's a good thing. So here's what we're trying to do. And it's always worth going into exploring small LLMs with a task in mind. And our task is this. We've got loads of user feedback, and we want to analyze that user feedback for insights. And we're not happy with the current process because we're sending it over to ChatGPT and they're stealing our data, etc. So what we're trying to do here is we're trying to see, can we use a small LLM and match the quality of insights that we get from the larger models to our task then? I've got some user feedback. Here's our user input. And this is a particularly gnarly example of some user input. I got this from Kaggle, which is a really good place to get data from. And this is based on Disneyland. And I've kind of modified this to be about Smoking Bones, which is a barbecue themed theme park. The reason why this is gnarly is because it jumps around from subject to subject. And it's also got some colloquialism here, which says France, so pigs might fly first. This might be useful to see how well it's able to pass that colloquialism and not take that too literally. And if I scroll up, here's my prompt. So I've got some context, I've given it a role, customer support analyst, and I've given it a task. So I want it to take some user input and I want it to fashion it in a specific format here. And I've given it an example. So this is called a one-shot prompt, where I've given it an example of some input and an example of an output. And then I've just given it this, my user input, and I've got a placeholder here where I wanted to spit out the specific insights based on this. And what I've done is I've created what I see to be perfect output. I've said perfect output, but really there's no right or wrong answer. But this gives you some idea of what I'd be happy with. So in terms of the number of insights, you can see like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 insights. And you can see the type of insights there, piloting, competition, escalating, etc., etc. Now, quick tip about getting your perfect prompt and output. You can use ChatGPT for this and then modify the output until you get something that is close to perfect as an output that you can get. So I always start with a AI-based output and then tweak it to make it seem like this is the best that it can be. Okay, so here's a prompt. copy that prompt and head on over to ChatGPT, and let's see how ChatGPT performs with this. So we have something to compare to when we look at LM Studio. And there's some output there. You got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 specific points that are made. And they're not bad. Picked up a couple of other things that I didn't pick up on. And that's fine. It's not perfect, but it's fairly adequate. Now let's head on over to LM Studio. Let's start with the 0.6 billion parameter model and see what usage we can get out of it. Right away, you can see that it's trying to do some thinking, and let's let it do that. And it's found 2 points. Not great. Edit the last output. Type in no think, save, and generate again. And you can see that it's generated the output straight away. And that is very quick, 63 tokens per second. But the output is not great. So let's try this 1.7 billion parameter model. And the first thing that happens when you load it is that it's going to move to memory. And then we want to say use current model, which means that model that's up there. Let's delete that output. Start again. Let's get our model. Start again. Put it in here. And this one has got think, no think as a toggle. So that's quite nice. So let me disable that and think, and then trigger that. So interestingly, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. It's found 8 insights. So it's kind of closer to ChatGPT actually. And that ChatGPT is ChatGPT 5, by the way. So this is comparing a tiny model to the squillion parameter model. And the insights are pretty on par. As you've seen, working with small models is easy, especially with LM Studio. It's also really addictive. And it can lead to some great finds. That 1.7 billion parameter model, I think, is a really great find. Now, I do think I can get some more juice out of this 0.6 billion parameter model. And I'm thinking to train this 0.6 billion parameter model to get it to behave better. But it's over to you now to explore the world of small models and see if you can find something that's suitable for your use case. But yeah, have fun exploring.